We're the top of this. We're the FBI. We're the federal government. We're here to help. All the rest of you guys, you local yokels there, you don't know what you're doing. We're the big guys. We're the FBI. We got this, right?
This is not a terrorist event.
This is not a terrorist event. Oh, okay. So it was around 6 a.m. yesterday on New Year's Day when local officials, law enforcement officials, and the FBI gathered for a press conference to give the latest information about the terror attacks that occurred at 3:15 Central Time on Bourbon Street. Here's the spokesperson, the assistant special field agent for the FBI in New Orleans, taking over and instilling confidence with the American people that they are competent, they are in charge, and they've got things under control. Let's see how she did.
We'll be taking over the investigative lead for this event. This is not a terrorist event. What it is right now is their improvised explosive devices that was found, and we are working on confirming if it's a viable device or not. As Chief Kirkpatrick said, we're asking everyone to stay away from Bourbon Street, specifically from Canal Street to St. Anne. That is my ask. Once again, stay away from Bourbon Street, Canal Street, all the way to St. Anne until we can figure out what is going on. Our goal is to provide you additional information at the 11 a.m. press conference.
Okay. Let's watch this together, shall we, and point out some of the aspects of this critically important attempt at messaging and calming the nerves of the American people that sort of went astray, that actually had the opposite effects. By the way, this is Alethea Duncan, and Alethea Duncan's official title is special agent. She's become the public face of the FBI down there. She is a special agent, but I also think her secondary title is the assistant field agent, which is a sort of a higher level position down there in the field in an area like New Orleans. All right, so let's begin, shall we?
We'll be taking over the investigative lead for this event.
We're going to be taking over the investigation duties for this event. So that immediately tells you we're in charge here. We are the top of this. We're the FBI. We're the federal government. We're here to help. All the rest of you guys, you local yokels there, you don't know what you're doing. We're the big guys. We're the FBI. We got this, right?
This is not a terrorist event.
This is not a terrorist event. Oh, okay. It's not a terrorist event. So up until this moment, the reports were that this guy in a pickup deliberately drove down Bourbon Street, actually hitting people and going out of his way to try to hit people. He had firearms. In fact, the initial reports were that he was shooting as well. And there were reports that there was an ISIS flag in the truck and that there were IEDs in the truck and around the area. But it's not a terrorist event. And let me just deliver a little bit of grace here at the beginning. Because I'm sorry, the fact of the matter is, when you first saw stories about a pickup truck driving down Bourbon Street at 3:15 in the morning on New Year's Eve, but my initial thought was it's one of two things. It's a terror attack or somebody got way drunk in New Orleans and they made a wrong turn, and this is a tragic, horrific episode. But then when you learn that there are explosive devices, don't you sort of think, okay, clearly it wasn't a drunk dude who made a wrong turn. This is a terror attack. But the first thing she says is, this is not a terrorist event. Okay, well, follow that up with some evidence to explain why you believe, FBI in charge of the investigation, why it's not a terrorist event.
What it is right now is their improvised explosive devices that was found, and we are working on confirming if it's a viable device or not.
Okay, so in the same breath that you tell me it's not a terrorist event, you also tell me that IEDs, explosive devices, was found. Yeah, by the way, that's the plural she used.
Devices that was found.
Devices that was found. No offense, I know people get nervous when it's their big moment to speak in front of a lot of people. There's cameras, there are lights, although, this is literally her job, to instill confidence and project competence to the people of that community and frankly around the world. And we can't speak the English language properly. Again, opposite effect here. Opposite effect if what you're doing is trying to instill confidence and project competence.
We are working on confirming if this is a viable device or not. As Chief Kirkpatrick said, we're asking everyone to stay away from Bourbon Street, specifically from Canal Street to St. Anne. That is my ask. Once again,
we want everyone to stay away from Bourbon Street and Canal Street. That's my ask. That's my ask? All right, I'll let it go. It's a vernacular thing, maybe.
Stay away from Bourbon Street, Canal Street, all the way to St. Anne until we can figure out what is going on.
Stay away until we can figure out what's going on. Okay, this is 3 hours after the event happened. She says it's not a terror attack, and then she says IEDs was found at the scene. Everyone stay away until we can figure out what's going on. You don't know what's going on. So you're telling us all you don't know what's going on. And you're instilling confidence and projecting competence. Oh, and let's not overlook the nose ring. Do we love the nose ring? I think Kash Patel is an incredibly competent man and a serious man. And I think that when he takes over the FBI, he's going to make a lot of great changes. May I humbly suggest something? Could we have sort of a basic conforming uniform for people in these positions again? There used to be a joke about FBIs and feds. You know, they all look the same. They all have the same haircut. They all dress the same. They wear the same suit. Could we, you know what? We don't even have to go that far. Could I make one request of Kash Patel? Kash, are you listening? Could we say no more nose rings? Because you want me to take you seriously, right? Alethea, Duncan, you want me to take you seriously? Do you know how you're taken seriously in the real world with grown-ups? You don't wear a nose ring. Don't wear a nose ring. This is an embarrassment. This is an absolute embarrassment. But it got worse. And I'm sorry, it's sort of bipartisan. Later in the afternoon, the Republican governor of Louisiana participated in a press conference, which we could do another hour on that press conference. And at one point, he said that they are confident. They're confident. The word he used was confident that there are other suspects still at large.
Hold on. Think who was next? We had over here.
Hi, Rachel Wolf from the Wall Street Journal. You said you were confident there are multiple suspects involved. What makes you confident in that?
Well, like, why would we tell you that? Again, again, we want to answer pertinent questions, but anything that would lead to impeding or endangering this investigation is not going to be said, okay? And we will, as information unfolds, this is a very fluid process. And remember something too, we're doing two things. We're hunting some bad people down and we're securing the city too. We're getting ready for a Sugar Bowl tomorrow. So if y'all would, again, if you have questions regarding Sugar Bowl, the safety of the city, or something to that effect, we're happy to answer. Okay.
All right. So now listen, I appreciate the colorful nature of Louisiana politics and politicians. I mean, you see one of our favorites there, Senator John Kennedy, right next to him, and he always delivers. I get that. In fact, we have a great clip from John Kennedy coming up here. Fine. You're colorful. You're fun. And I do like, the reporter says, you're confident that they're accomplices. Why are you confident? And he says, why would I tell you that? But here's the problem. Later in the day, or excuse me, was this later in the day or earlier this morning? We were told by the FBI that there were no accomplices. Earlier this morning, I think they reported that. So yesterday afternoon, they were confident that there were accomplices. And now this morning, law enforcement is saying that they don't think there are any other accomplices and this guy acted alone. Is it too much to ask for clear, concise information from the leaders, elected officials, as well as law enforcement at times like this? And if you don't know for sure, don't say anything. And for God's sake, if there's still a question, Don't say you're confident of something and then 12 hours later have that thing you were confident of be completely contradicted. Is that too much to ask? I don't think it is. But it really does start from the top down. God. For 3 glorious minutes, Joe Biden got to calm the nerves of the American people with a scripted teleprompter assistant speech from Camp David. Yeah, that's right. He left his vacation in St. Croix, Virgin Islands, flew to Delaware, and then the next day flew to Camp David because he needed a break. He wanted to rest from his vacation. So he's at Camp David. He's got the weird thing with the jujubes in the chin again. Do you see the little balls? It's like he's got little sort of, what are those? Like little silicon ball bearings, jujubes or gumballs, other kind of balls. So he puts his face together and he goes out and he mumbles and meanders and loses his place when he only had 3 minutes to deliver information to us. And by the way, while he's at it, listen to yet another mixed message coming from the President of the United States.
Here's what we know so far. The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill. The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby. The situation is very fluid, and the investigation has a preliminary stage. And the fact is that right now, there you go. The law enforcement and intelligence community are continuing to look for any connections, associations, or co-conspirators. We have nothing additional to report at this time. The investigation is continuing to be active, and no one should jump to conclusions.
Wow, I feel better, don't you? I feel this. I see again. This is Joe Biden at his best, the consoler in chief, the sympathizer in chief, the grand communicator. 3 minutes of a scripted teleprompter speech, and he still loses his place and has no idea what he's doing. He slurs his way through it. And I'm sorry, let's just reiterate what you just heard from the President of the United States. Here's what we know. He was born in Texas. He rented the truck. Hours before the attack, he posted videos saying that he was aligned with ISIS, radical Islamic jihadists, and he was going to try to kill as many people as possible. There were explosive devices found in the vehicle, as well as explosive devices planted nearby. And he had an ISIS flag in the truck. And finally, and most importantly, don't anyone jump to any conclusions. I mean, I don't know, Joe, what conclusion would we jump to with all of those facts in front of us? I mean, we're still putting the puzzle pieces together here. Don't anybody jump to conclusions. Does anyone have a brain in this administration? ISIS flag, video saying that he was radicalized by ISIS, wanted to kill as many people as possible. Exploding devices found in the vehicle and planted around the place. But for God's sake, everyone, don't jump to any conclusions. Can I tell you something? If they did a cursory internet search and found that at some point this guy registered as a Republican at any point in his life or went to a Trump rally, I assure you conclusions would be leapt to. I think maybe that's what Joe is holding out for. Let's not anybody jump to any conclusions. As far as we know, he could still be MAGA. We're going to search the home. We might find a MAGA hat. And at that point, then we'll know for sure. But yeah. Okay, everybody. Let's not leap to any conclusions. Let's not leap to any conclusions at all. There's the ISIS flag in the aftermath of the attack. But no, nobody leap to any conclusions, please. Here's the Catholic Cathedral and a shrine of Christianity right where the explosive devices were planted. But let's nobody jump to any conclusions. The mosque located right near the New Orleans terror attack, right near the suspect's house in Houston, is now directing all of its members, if they are asked any questions, to say they should refer them to CARE. CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is a unindicted co-conspirator in terror attacks post 9/11. But let's not anybody leap to any conclusions. And about those videos, about his activities leading right up to the terror attacks, well, I'll hand it off to now the deputy assistant of the FBI, who has gotten down to New Orleans to take control of things. And I will point out he does not have a nose ring.
There were 5 videos posted on Jabbar's Facebook account, which are timestamped beginning at 1:29 a.m. and the last at 3:02 a.m. In the first video, Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned the news headlines would not focus on the, quote, war between the believers and the disbelievers, end quote. Additionally, he stated he had joined ISIS before this summer. He also provided a will and testament. FBI and ATF. FBI, we have a couple different scenes at the location. We have released the scene at Bourbon Street. That scene has been released. We also have a scene off of Mandeville address where we're currently searching.
All right, they're going to continue to deliver information for the people of New Orleans about the neighborhoods that are now releasing and are open to the public again for cleanup purposes, et cetera. Seems to me it's okay to leap to a few conclusions here and there about this. And one conclusion I think we should all leap to is that for the last 4 years, federal agencies, intelligence community, and the President of the United States willfully and deliberately took their eye off the ball. How many times have we seen Joe Biden proclaim that the greatest threat to the American homeland is terror attacks from white supremacists and white nationalists and MAGA conservatives? He devoted an entire speech standing in front of Independence Hall, drenched in red lighting that made it look like it was on fire or bleeding from the gates of hell, saying that conservative MAGA Republicans were the greatest threat to our Constitution. They've just spent years telling you that you're the problem because you don't vote Democrat, that you're the biggest threat, that you're on the brink of it. That same FBI, who's now trying to act competent, and they're not doing a great job down in New Orleans, spent the last 3.5 years patting themselves on the back because they spent hundreds of millions of dollars tracking down grandma because she walked through a door of the Capitol on January 6th that was held open by a cop. But they didn't stop for a second to pour into everybody's social media posts about January 6th or about the 2020 election or about the COVID vaccine or about wearing masks and social distancing. You say the wrong thing about those things and you are under scrutiny. But this guy got overlooked. Merrick Garland's Justice Department and Christopher Wray's FBI set up special task force to look into parents going to school board meetings because they were upset that their kids couldn't go back to school and started getting a little emotional with their local school boards. They set up task forces to enforce the FACE Act, which was supposed to prevent murders, violent threats, and bombings at abortion factories, but instead they employed that law to arrest women in their 70s who were praying the rosaries outside of Planned Parenthood. They barged into a man's home at 6 a.m. with guns ablaze and arrested him for praying on the sidewalk in Philadelphia in front of an abortion clinic. And let's not forget, public enemy number one, Donald Trump, where we had tens of millions of dollars spent by a special prosecutor to go after him. And now all of his charges have been withdrawn. We had an FBI raid on his home, a former president, claiming that he had nuclear secrets that he was going to give to the Saudis when they actually staged the photograph from his residence with giant red signs that said top secret that they brought along to the scene just so they could have that photograph. We had a district attorney in Fulton County arrest him and get a mugshot that ended up being the single greatest fundraising device that Donald Trump used in his entire re-election campaign. And then we had a district attorney in Manhattan making up new laws so that they could convict Donald Trump on multiple felonies, and the American people still rejected it. But all the while, as that was what our Justice Department, our FBI, and major district attorneys' offices in Manhattan and Atlanta and elsewhere in this country, as they were focusing on that, the man who just murdered multiple people in New Orleans while they were celebrating New Year's Eve flew right under their noses. And nobody saw his social media posts. Nobody saw his videos. Nobody saw any of it because they were looking somewhere else. They were looking at you. One other item of note that we should bear in mind as we reflect on the horror of this terror attack. I reiterate, it was New Orleans. It was New Year's Eve. It was 3:15 in the morning. Who's on Bourbon Street on New Year's Eve at 3:15 in the morning? Young people. Young people celebrating their future. Here's a witness and a friend of one of the victims.
He's coming up all onto the sidewalk and all that, but by that time we had already made it inside the divot, or is what I thought. Until once we get inside the divot and the car passes, I turned around to like look who's all in here because it was supposed to be three of us. I turned around to look who's all in here, and I don't see my friend. And I just start screaming and yelling, and I'm like, nah, where are you? And I turn and I look in the street, and her right leg is flipped like a horror movie style over her back, and it's just blood.
The grief can't be overstated when you think about the horror of this event. And that's the whole point. That's what jihadists want. Hours after this attack, Times Square was flooded by the same pro-Hamas, anti-Israel, pro-terror demonstrators screaming, "Globalize the Intifada." This is what globalizing the Intifada looks like. One other note I promised you, and I do want to lighten it a bit. Our friend Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana was at the podium for part of this press conference. And at one point, a press aide was trying to point out who from what network was where at the podium. And somebody said that NBC News was to the right. I want you to see his reaction.
Can I say something, Riker? Tell me who you're with. WDSU. Okay, and CBS.
NBC's over here on the right.
Oh, that's an unusual position.
I don't get it.
You wouldn't.
I appreciate the dark humor. At times of grief and horror and terror and anger and despair and frustration, sometimes you do have to make a joke. I get it. But in the long run, this is not a laughing matter. We are under attack. We have been for a while. And for the last several years, this administration has not only looked the other way and allowed criminals, international criminals and terrorists to enter our country, but they also have empowered and enriched the very governments in the Middle East who fund these terror attacks. They have called our friends enemies, and they have made friends with our enemies. And January 20th cannot come soon enough.